tools that I'll probably be using for this project. Well, I gotta draw it out on some paper. I'm gonna have to do some kind of measurements. I'm gonna be doing some cutting, filing, hammering. The material that I will be using mostly for this project is going to be 1/8 inch, I believe it's close to 2.5 millimeters, round steel rod. I also have a few bending jigs that I've created. One for doing scrolls, small bends, slightly bigger bends, bigger bends. And I'll be using this on some sheet metal made for the base of it. Somewhere in the middle here, I'm going to be putting some sort of symbol, and this is where if you're designing your own, you choose what you want to put in, whether you're looking for something dainty, a flower, your initials, or the initials of someone you're giving it to. I previously did one with the letter E because that was a letter that I was trying to create. These sections here, I'm going to redraw them better. I'm just sketching my ideas right now, are going to end up being scrolls. Scrolls are those curved, fancy looking pieces of metal. Straight down the middle, this is going to separate necklaces from things like earrings and bracelets. I'm going to put a small spot up here that has hooks. And that will allow necklaces to hang down all the way here on these little things. All of this is going to be made out of the 1/8 inch steel rod. Directly across from there, I'll put a piece of sheet metal with a bunch of holes drilled in it, and I will figure out the spacing once I actually have this sized up. That will be able to put earrings in there with the backings behind it, because earrings usually aren't too long. Up here I'm going to have another set of hooks. This might be for bracelets, and another set here also for bracelets. Now I could also do 2 different sections here with earrings, but it really depends on the style you're going for. There's going to be a small stand right here. Side view of that is going to be here, a hump, and then flat. It'll be all MIG welded together. These dots are signifying where I'm going to be doing my welds. It does not need to be heavy duty because this is not going to be a heavy project. Now that I have my basic thing laid out, I can now start trying to figure out my measurements. I'm going to go for 20 centimeters wide. I'm going to go 28 centimeters tall, and this is not counting the base, this is just the actual stand here. I'm going to go 28. This bar going across, I know that that spacing is going to be 20, but I'm going to need to leave some extra material here in order to do the scrolls. I'm not going to plan that part out yet. I'm going to plan that one as I go. This center one here is probably going to be just a little smaller than 28 to make room for this and the actual width here of my piece. So its inside is probably going to be closer to 27.7 centimeters when that's done. So I'm just going to write that 27.7 question mark. I will cut it to fit. These scrolls, I don't know exactly how big they're going to be yet, and it's going to depend on the size of the jig that I use to actually go and bend it. I'm going to start by measuring 76 centimeters for the base. That's how big it goes from down over down. Typically use a file just to get rid of sharp edges. I want to have these smooth anyways for when I put it all together. Next, my plans are 28, 20, 28. Measure 28, 20, 28. And if they don't bend perfectly, that's okay. I'm going to make it fit as long as it's centered. Oh, beauty. Okay. I got my main marks here. I'm going to stick it in a vise, straight up and down. I'm just going to bend it over by hitting it with a hammer. Now, I'm not going directly on the line. I'm going to bring it a little bit up because I know I'm going to lose a bit of material when I do my bend. So as long as I'm consistent when I measure the other side, I should be fine. Because it's so thin, I can always add little bends if I need to straighten it out and align it. Perfect. Test if it sits flat. If one of them's up a little bit, just tweak it until it works. There, that was easy. All right, next pieces. I've got an extra long piece here that I'm going to start off for my top. This is going to have a scroll on either side. Before I even cut this out, I'm not quite sure how much material I'm going to need. So I'm going to bend a scroll, move it over, figure out exactly how much I need over on this side. Quick way to figure that out is going to be adding markings on here to figure out how much material is used up within a scroll. So I'm going to make marks at every 1 centimeter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know it's not going to use that much, but this allows me to figure out how much am I going to need to leave over on that side. If I use 10, will I still have enough over on this side? So my piece is going to be going into my scroll jig. This is just custom made specifically for this type of wire. Jam it into that little lock spot. I'm going to keep my marks upright so it's easier to count. There we go, you can see how it locks in there. I'm going to bend around carefully. I'm not going to bend all the way around because this is all about the visual and how I want it to look. I'm going to bend and stop till it's just past this point for me, and that will result in a very simple bend. Now, how many did it use up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when it was in there, I kind of stopped bending. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About between 5.5 here. So that's going to allow me to figure out how far do I need to measure. Yeah, I kind of like the way that this looks lined up with that much overhanging. I think that looks goofy. I think I like that. So to me, that lines up on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to make these notes so that later I can do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I know I need to measure from there 20. And then another 7. So from this point, measure over 20, and I'm going to do those 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have my marks. I'm going to quickly put them on the other side too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. Kind of where I stopped my bend. Okay. Give yourself a visual. We can sand this off after, no problem. Jam it in there. Try your best to keep it level so that this isn't curled up or down when we do it. And take it out. I want to look at it. Did I bend it enough? Do I need to bend a little more? What do you think? Here. It almost fits too. There. Both of those look pretty similar. I'm happy with that. All right, so I know that my basic bend here uses up 7 centimeters of material. Well, if I want to figure out how big of a scroll I'm going to be making for here, they're going to be both the same regardless of what design I put in the middle. I might as well just trace out my scroll and then decide how big I want it to be. There's my end bend. I can kind of just visually put it on paper. What do I like? Do I want it like this, where it kind of looks like a weird jelly bean thing, or maybe a little bit further? That's not too bad. That would use up a total of 7 here, 7 here. If I wanted to make it longer, I would just add some more in this flat spot here. But that gives me a total of 14 centimeters, and I can make 2 little scrolls to go on the top of this project. Now the first scroll is going to be easy. Just as a visual for myself for where to stop, again I'm going to mark out my center, 7 centimeters in the middle. I'll bend a little bit on each side before I do the whole thing. So I want to make sure I don't do too much. So right now they aren't quite looking the same. I'll bend it a little bit more, a little bit on each, a little bit on each. You don't want to over bend it. I'm going to visually look at it, which one needs a little more, which one might need a little bit, not quite as much. Oh, that's pretty good. There, those two both look really, really similar. If your pieces don't quite line up, you'll see that this piece is a little crooked, that piece is a little crooked. Just use a vise. You don't really need any power tools or big hammers, just to kind of ease them into being straight. Maybe a little hammer. Maybe a little hammer on there. Just enough to kind of tap it over. Should sit without wiggling too much. This is a metal art project, so it's okay if it's a little bit funky. This one, you see they're curled in just a little bit. Good, they'll sit flat. Okay, let's get a piece for the middle here. I've already guessed that it's probably gonna be around 27.7 centimeters. But you could also just do it until it fits. I'm gonna cut slightly big on purpose so that if I have to grind off, a couple millimeters, no big deal. Now I'm gonna do my best to get this centerpiece directly in the middle. I can do that just by checking the distance between here and the other, what I'll call the inside. Call it a diameter if you want. Well, that's for circles, isn't it? It doesn't matter, the inside space. I've got roughly 9.4 on this side, 9.6, I'll move it over a little bit, 9.5, about 9.5. I'll do the same measurement down closer to the bottom, 9.7, 9.7. Okay, so that tells me that maybe this thing is not going completely out. I'm gonna go based on the larger one, just to cut my rough, 9.7, 9.7. I'm gonna get a couple more of these rods for going across. I'm gonna have one for necklaces and two more down below for bracelets at 9.7 centimeters. I'm gonna cut each one just a little big again on purpose so I can leave room for grinding it down. I'm not terribly worried about precision as long as it looks square and even. But that being said, don't cut too small. I'm measuring this based on where my project is at. Things might change on yours depending on how you did your bends as you started building. Play it safe, cut it a little bit bigger. We're not really wasting material. Now I'm probably gonna have one up here for the necklaces. There's gonna be a sheet metal there for earrings. I wanna put one here. Put another one roughly there. Visually, I just want to make this visually appealing, not so much that it's measured exact, but get it close. That spacing looks like 9, 8, 8. So maybe I'll bring this one a little bit closer down, that one a little up. 8 and a bit, 8 and a bit, 8 and a bit. I'm happy with that. I'm actually going to write that down. I'm going to write 8 plus, 8 plus, 8 plus. And then my top distance here is roughly about 3. Make it visually appealing for yourself and its purpose. I'm going to file or grind each one just until it fits. Gently in there. I always like to round over my edges too, just so it feels nicer when I'm working. No need to cut my fingers. Okay, I got these two. Looks like I have to trim off a couple millimeters from each to make them fit. I'm gonna do one at a time and come back. If you wanna get both of them the same length, I can kind of just hold it like that with my fingers and keep going until that one's close. I've got another millimeter to go. Almost. Almost. That's good. Round it over. There, those are good. So each piece is roughly 9.6 to 9.5 centimeters long. And I'm gonna be adding little hangers or hooks to each of these. I'm gonna do 2 centimeter roughly spacing in between and have 4 hangers, 1, 2, 3, 4. And each little hook is gonna be a bit of an L shape. I'm gonna make each hook about 2 centimeters long. and then put a little bend in it. Now when I bend these, I'm going to be making sure that my smooth end that I just grinded is going to be the actual part sticking out. The rough end doesn't matter so much because it's going to be covered in a weld. I'm going to line it up roughly halfway in my vise. And I don't want to do a huge bend, just enough that it'll act as a nice hook. Kind of like a banana. Very small. If I bend one a little bit too much, I'll just stick it back in the vise, squash it, just to straighten it out a bit. So I'm going to have 4 of those on each little hanger here. They're going to be going kind of upright like that. And if I need to bend them more, I can do that after I've welded. Since I'm doing a roughly 2 centimeter spacing for each one, I'm going to line that up in the middle and figure out where I'm doing that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I haven't welded everything else yet for this project, but I'm going to get these welded up, and then if I need to grind or make things fit a little bit differently, I can do that as well. After I've got those 3 made, I'll start working on the earring holder. So now that I have my pieces here, I've got them laid out. I can see it with my marker, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those that are spaced about 2 centimeters apart. I'm just going to weight that down with just a piece of scrap metal for now. I'm going to be holding my pieces, my little hangers, with a pair of linesman pliers, kind of upside down like that. So the curve is going that way so I can weld it on the back. It's going to be a little bit hard to see, but I'm still going to do my best to film that for you. And hold that down like this, line it up, and then go in there with my welder and zap it. Take your time to get your setup so you don't have to break these off and re-weld them. So I'm going to line it up like that. Maybe one day if I was to mass produce these, I'd build a jig. One down, 11 to go. Now because when I'm welding it was a little hard to hold them perfect, I'm just going to tap them into the shape so they're all roughly even. One day if I decide to make like big batches of these, I'll make a jig that holds everything. But this is just nice, quick, and simple. I'll also go and grind off any of these that are a little bit too big. Those are all going to be held up, not straight like this where things can fall off, but on a slight bend so that it can hang and hold everything it needs. I'm going to go ahead and make the 2 earring holders now. I'm going to use some 16 gauge steel because that's what I have in the shop, but pretty much anything that's weldable will work for this. I'm going to create some strips here that are 10 millimeters wide or 1 centimeter. If you're like many people, you won't have one of these to measure 10 millimeters, so you may have to use a ruler. I'm going to use a caliper. I'm going to set this to 10 mil, and that way all I have to do is scratch my line in. I'm going to cut it and I'll do another one. Since I'm making 2, I'm just going to adjust this over to 20 mil and hope that I actually cut on the line. This would be a lot easier with a larger piece. I have my 2 10 millimeter wide strips, 1 centimeter or so. And remember, I mean, you can always try to find a socket to measure with, but you might not get that lucky. I'm gonna get those cut to length, and then I'm gonna figure out my spacing for the holes. I usually like to put a little bit of Sharpie on there because I don't have any of that blue layout ink. And then just use my scribe to show up as a scratch in that Sharpie. Makes it a lot easier for me to see when I'm cutting. If you're worried about cutting it perfect, just cut it a little bit big and then file down. I'm gonna use my caliper again to draw a line directly down the middle for my layout holes. If each of these is 10 millimeters wide, I'm gonna measure this to 5 mil. Draw a center line. And now figure out my spacing. Top will be used for studs, bottom will be used for longer earrings. That's why there's a bigger space here. I want to be able to put up 8 total pairs of earrings, so there's going to be 16 holes. 8 here, 8 here. I'm going to do each one 1 centimeter apart. So I'm just going to line that up, get it all kind of where I want it to look. About there, there we go. That's going to give me roughly 12 millimeters on each end before I drill a hole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How was that for counting? So now I've got 8 here, 8 there. I'm gonna go ahead and center punch them, and we're gonna drill them all with a small drill bit. I mean, earrings are pretty tiny, so they're gonna have no problem fitting through, but I'll probably use an 1/8 inch drill bit. One slipped, that's okay. There's probably a better method to do this, but this is what I've got right now. I want these to be smooth because you don't want whoever's putting earrings in to, you know, cut their fingers. More than needed, at least. Bueno! There we go. We are coming together now. Those 2 pieces are going to look like that. There we go. That's actually fairly even. Not every hole was perfect, but that's okay for this project. I could spend more time doing it again, but this is my first prototype. So for my center design, I'm gonna just do a simple heart shape. I think it matches nicely with the little scroll shapes I've done. You can get fancier and make anything you want for your own centerpiece. This is gonna take me probably about 15 centimeters. I think I'm gonna make it out of 2 separate pieces and then weld it in the middle. So now that that's all welded up, I'll do some final little sanding and filing to this just to get rid of any spots where maybe there's a little bit of weld spatter, little sharp stuff that you don't want to cut your hand on, and just to make it more visually appealing. I probably didn't need to weld everything. This is not a heavy duty project, but it is strong, it's not going to break, and it is a little bit more work now to file. I could have welded the entire thing from the back so you wouldn't see the welds, but I don't really care. I like it this way. This is about making your stuff the way that you want, not the way that I or somebody else wants to see it. The final pieces I need to create are 2 pieces for the base. I'm going to do some 10 centimeter long pieces here, you can see that there, and I'm going to make them 1 centimeter or 10 millimeters wide. That will also match my little earring hangers. I'm going to cut them just a little bit longer because it's not going to be 10 centimeters of metal, it's going to have to be a little bit more because of this curve that's in there. I'm going to cut out 12 centimeters first and see how the curve looks. If I need to trim a little bit, I'll update that in the plans. I want to round these over because that's boring when it's flat and sharp like that. Do a rough cut while still maintaining its length, and then just use a file to round it over. I'm hoping for my pieces to have a 2 centimeter foot, curve, another 2 centimeter foot. I'm going to use this 6 centimeter circle piece of pipe. You can also call that 2 1/4 inches to try to get a little curve here. So about 2 centimeters, 2 centimeters, and whatever it is that uses this up. As long as these both turn out the same, I'm going to be happy with it. So when I weld these on with this part upright, I'm going to put these on 2 centimeters from the edge on center. 2 centimeters from the edge on the center.
To hold everything up, I'm using a 90-degree magnet on the back. These are just very small tack welds. I'll use a sandblaster just to prep the material for paint, smooths it out a little bit, and just gives it a nice even look. This also helps to hide any of those Sharpie marks. I find using a black marker ends up showing through paint and I have to do more layers than needed. So already that looks really nice just like that, but I'm going to be giving it a coat of silver spray paint just to make it pop. A lot of these projects are just little prototypes I make to try to inspire students to come up with their own designs. Start with this as a base and go from there. Have them make it bigger, smaller, out of other materials, decorate it, pick out different types of logos or things up at the top. More than just a heart or a letter, they can come up with all sorts of things. They could also inspire them to try to make their own jigs to get different kind of scroll bends and all sorts of stuff like that. It all comes down to the planning and putting the ideas that are in your head down onto the material that you're using. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I will always try and do my best to get back to people if they leave comments. I hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching.